Welcome to the Tevora Talks InfoSec podcast and daily news, brought to you by Tevora. Welcome to another episode of Tevora Talks. I am your host, Cash, and joined always by my co-host and partner in cybercrime, Matt Mosley. What up, Matt? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We got another week ahead of us, but everything's good on my end. Seems like things are getting back to normal. World's still in a little bit of chaos, but overall, feeling better.
Yeah, the world is definitely falling apart still, but our jobs are still in high demand, right? So with that said, let's jump into the news this week. A lot of crazy things are going on. New vulnerabilities are out. A couple that me and you were discussing. One that seems to never leave the topics right now is Zoom. Zoom still has vulnerabilities. And then after we'll talk about Zoom, we'll jump into something called SMBleed, which you have some experience about, so you can shed some knowledge there. But let's jump into it. Zoom. Did you hear about the new vulnerability? What's happening now?
I did, and it seems like when you're the top pick for everybody's conferencing, you got a target on your back, I guess. So I'm sure every week we're going to hear something new.
But yeah, Zoom is pretty crazy. It's like, you're right. So many people use it. And it kind of goes to that thing is like when everybody uses your platform, you really got to make sure you're on top of it. So if there's not an army of Zoom people trying to, patch this thing up right now, I'd be surprised. But what is a vulnerability? So Zoom, you can send GIFs or GIFs. I guess we were debating.
Which is it?
I don't know. I'm going to say.
I need you to settle the debate right here, right now.
I'm saying GIF.
I say GIF. We'll have to see what everyone else says.
And leave a comment. Let us know, GIF or GIF. But nonetheless, so in Zoom, you can send a GIF. And and what hackers have figured out is they can embed some code within that. And then they send it. And then whoever downloads it, I guess something along the lines of Zoom, it doesn't, like when it extracts it, it turns it into a zip file. And then if you open the zip file, it's like, boom, there you go. Source code dropped. And it doesn't have any kind of check in place to make sure that it's sanitized before it pulls it down.
Right. Because why would you, though? I mean, think about it. Like, it's a chat. So, I mean, I don't know. Even as a security guy, I wouldn't think that the chat would have to be secured. But I guess we now know that you have to secure everything. So I guess it goes back to those fundamental rules of like sanitizing input, right? Always want to sanitize input. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, and what happens is, I guess, once it's installed, the guy, depends on whatever he dropped in, he has full access. He has full access to your system. And, it's a vulnerability. There's two. It's the first one is CVE 2020-6109. And that's what uses the Giphy service or Giphy service. And then there's a second one. It's CVE 2020-6110, right? And that's also using code snippets shared throughout the chat. I don't know how these guys, they like sit there and they say like, let's see how we can hack Zoom. Right?
Well, yeah, it's a hot topic right now. So if you want to make a name for yourself, this is how you do it, right? You go and target everything that everyone's using. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
See, the situation with Zoom is it's so necessary, it's so in demand. There's no new app that can come that's gonna be able to be launched in a week that's fully bulletproof. So no matter what, I guess every app is always gonna have its vulnerabilities, right? I mean, look at Windows. Windows never stops having vulnerabilities, right? It's like 30 years into Windows. And
yeah, it still has issues. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we go into some Windows vulnerabilities? So there's this thing. It's called SMBleed, and it's a vulnerability for Windows. It affects, like what it sounds like, it's gonna affect the SMB protocol.
Yep. Yeah. So CVE 2020-1206. So The flaw, I guess, resides in the SMB decompression function. This is the same function that some of you may remember as SMB Ghost or the Eternal Darkness bug that was recently released as well, or I should say released, but also patched. There is a patch available, so even though this does affect all, well, not all, but most versions of Windows 10, you can definitely get a patch to fix it, so you're not susceptible to it. But what it basically allows is a remote attacker to drop a file on the remote system. And then in combination with something else, right, they're going to need something else to execute that file. Then they could potentially do, exploit the machine. So dropping a file just by itself is not going to, pop the machine. But, if someone was to drop a binary or something that's maybe some sort of callback or whatever you want to call it, malware, something that allows the attacker to gain access, you'd need some sort of interaction from the client, right? So you need the person sitting there to, oh, what's this file? Then double click it and open it up.
Yeah.
Well, with the combination of SMB Ghost and SMBleed, you can drop the file, and then using SMB Ghost, you can execute the file. So then you can launch your code or launch your attack and take over the box. So it's pretty interesting. There's a group called ZecOps, ZEC Ops, that has put together a pretty nice write-up on the two with some POC code and everything that you can run through. But yeah, I would say pretty severe vulnerability. You do have to have access to SMBs, so hopefully you don't have TCP port 445 exposed to the internet. But I will say I've seen more than my fair share of clients with networks that have that port exposed. So heads up to everybody out there, just make sure that's not exposed to the internet. If you have it internally, you can also disable or block that port so that you can prevent lateral movement and remote exploitation. That's one thing that we do at Tevora is, like none of our computers can talk to each other. We have to, if we want to share files, we have to put it in a central location and then have the other person grab it. That's just good security. I don't even know if it's best practices, but it's definitely a good tactic for preventing lateral movement. So you have that for sure. But yeah, other than that, I guess just do your automatic patching. Make sure that Windows is up to date. So anything you want to add there?
It is Tuesday, right? Patch Tuesday.
It is Patch Tuesday. I think there's some other patches too that they had announced today. So
I read somewhere it was like 120 some patches.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely patch against SMBleed, but then patch against the other 128
129
vulnerabilities that are available. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think Microsoft does a pretty decent job when they know about it to fix it. There's a couple that have slipped through the cracks for years, but overall I think they do a pretty good job. But yeah, like you said, like with Zoom, it's one of those things is like, especially when you're the top quadrant of your market, people want to target you and they'll find everything and everything in a way to, take advantage of you. So, one thing that, back in my development days was, if you don't do it right the first time, you'll never have time to do it right ever again kind of thing. And so, yeah, you never want to do shortcuts or anything like that. But I would say with these two companies, it's not a matter of even doing shortcuts or not coding it right the first time. It's just a matter of maybe a combination of not knowing security best practices, not knowing secure code techniques and trends and all that good stuff. And with Microsoft, there's so many people working on so many different things and so many moving parts that I think there's always just going to be flaws no matter what.
Yeah, and again, what is it? I remember the quote. It says, "We can never prove the absence of bugs, or tests can't prove the absence of bugs." But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you really can't, right? You'll never know that. Even if something visually looks like it's working perfectly, you test it, you build a million test cases. There's always that one test case that, hey, you forgot to cover, or you just didn't think of covering. And of course, there's those hackers who think of it, but
Yep. Well, I mean, that's, and back to my pen testing days, it was, I could do a pen test and find, whatever vulnerabilities and exploits. And then someone else could do the same exact test and find other things. It's just the nature of how it works. People think differently and they solve problems differently than the other person. So, also experience, right? The other person might know of other things they can daisy chain together that I didn't know I could daisy chain together, stuff like that. So,
yeah.
but yeah, that's why we always practice security in layers, right? We try and it's not a matter of if anymore, of if I'll be compromised, it's when. And you always want to make sure that when you are compromised, that it's a small breach and not a full breach. Right? I always kind of equate it to like a ship in the water, right? And you have the different sections of the hull, and so one breach the water starts flooding into that one hole, but because we have multiple layers, we can actually close the hatch and seal it off, and the water doesn't spread throughout. That's kind of what we want to do here, right? We always want to do security in layers. So anyway, I digress.
Speaking of being like breached and stuff, initially I didn't think this was like a crazy subject, but the fact that it leads to like patches and check your software and put it out there. So there's this company, it's a new app. They're trying to pretty much be a clone of TikTok. I kind of briefly mentioned this to you, but their vulnerability is like, it's too bad, right? So they're using, for people to log in, they use like Google login, right? But apparently the way the app was designed, they don't have any kind of tokens being passed or anything like that. So you don't even need the person's password to log into their account.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can just type in their username and hit sign in, and it's like, ding, signed in. That's simple. It's like, come on. But I mean, I guess in their defense, defending them a lot, not really, but so apparently they didn't design the app from scratch. They bought it. It was like already, developed app. They bought it. I don't know if this is real. It says they bought it for $34.
Oh, nice.
Which is great, but hey, $34, like
you get what you pay for.
For sure, that can't be a bulletproof app, So,
that's funny. I remember doing a pen test. It was a mobile app pen test. It's kind of like a mobile app / web app pen test because the mobile app just basically loaded a website. But it was like a long time ago, probably almost a decade ago. But it wasn't that anyone could log into it, but basically what it was is everything was set up in CSS layers. So that if you wanted to see everything on the account or I think you could even enumerate accounts, but if you wanted to see everything in the account, you just basically disable layers and then you would see everything, right? So the login screen was a layer, and then behind that was the dashboard for the account. And obviously you'd have to have someone's creds or something to log in and get to pull the account details. But the login screen could easily be bypassed and you could get into the dashboard just by disabling the layer. You just turn it off and everything would load on one page. So it's kind of funny.
That's simple enough.
Yeah. So,
but anyway. What is the moral of the story today? The moral of the story is if you're designing an app, do your best to make it as secure as possible before you spread it to the masses. Because I think that's where it becomes like a huge issue.
And what does that mean? Do your best to make sure it's as secure as possible. Like, what are some things?
I don't know. At the very minimum, make sure there's like some basic encryption happening.
Yep.
Like this, what was this thing called? Mitron. Make sure you have to put a password in to log in. I think that's a basic.
A strong password?
Any password, like just even one key.
Make sure that password's secured on the database.
Yeah, so anything.
It's encrypted, sure it's not hashed.
Backup, but.
Yeah. All kinds of things, right? Run a pen test against your app before you release it.
Yeah, totally. Before you get, 100,000 people plus on there.
Yep. Do a secure code scan of it just to make sure that there's no vulnerabilities. Sanitize your inputs, as we learned with Zoom and others. That's still weird to me that like the chat is not, when it gets saved, it's just not plain text. Like I would, even as a developer with no security background, I would have just done that because I would have found no reason to have the chat do anything else than just be plain text. That's just kind of weird to me. I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
Maybe they
Wrap
maybe
up your
thought it's
final
gonna be
thoughts. I
better.
apologize.
No, that's the final thoughts. No other final thoughts. Zoom, step up your game. People are relying on you.
COVID-19, we need you.
Yeah, we need you. It's yeah.
I'm still kicking myself for not investing in that penny stock with the same name.
Zoom.
Jeez, yeah.
I wonder if it's still up. Did it crash? Or probably crashed by now, though.
I think the SEC stopped people from investing in it when they realized what was going on, which to me is like, well, I don't know. Like, why would you stop that?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure whoever owns that
is this
company,
not America? Am I not free to do what I want to do?
But yeah, that's all I got. That's all the news so far this week. It is Tuesday, Patch Tuesday. If you have a Windows system, patch it, right? Make sure you're constantly updating that thing because, like I said, it's been how many years since Windows has been out? And
long time.
And they got patches every single Tuesday. So I mean, think about it. So definitely patch your stuff up.
They get so tired of patching their operating systems, they just move on to the next version and they stop supporting it.
Pretty much.
They're like, F you.
And then they got to rinse and repeat, start patching that one. I bet you they start patching it even before they start coding it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure the life cycles are just crazy.
Crazy.
For new stuff, yeah.
But hey, what can you do? So nonetheless, that wraps it up, I guess, for Tevora Talks this week. Stay tuned, and we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about? Hacker.
Hacker history. We're going to do the Sony hack, the big Sony Pictures hack. Hopefully we'll be doing that pretty soon here. So
yeah, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, that'll be a lot more exciting than our news. We're not going to uncover any new details about the hack or anything like that, but there's some people that, it was a while ago. So there's some people that probably don't know that much about it. So
no, I'd definitely like to hear more about it. That's for sure. And
there's some juicy details that came out in the emails and all kinds of stuff. So
juicy stuff is good.
Yeah, I'm sure there was some racist stuff, so we can get the BLM involved.
Oh, God. Don't go there.
But yeah, no, there was definitely, I think everyone in Hollywood at one point was just like, oh crap, what did I say? Do I have anything in the Sony emails that is going to ruin me?
But with that said, if you're out there, stay safe. If you're protesting, be safe.
Yep.
And with that said, I guess we'll talk to you guys next time. Tune in again for Hacker News. We're going to go over the Sony hack, infamous Sony hack. And with that said, I guess, Matt, we'll talk to you later.
Perfect. Adios.
Adios. Tevora out.